Last week, I had the privilege to attempt, to the best of my abilities, to cook beef rendang in its original form. Today, we're making braised beef with rendang flavors, and it'll be much more simple to make. Having had a week to reflect on the flavor profile, I realized this slow, gentle caramelization is not dissimilar to the classic method of making French onion soup. You can easily read in literature that it takes an hour of tender love and care. And the splitting of the coconut milk, of course, is not dissimilar to what occurs during a coconut-based Thai curry. So I thought we'll combine those two methods and hopefully we could achieve a result that would do the terminology rendang justice. But first, like any braising dishes, we braise the meat. And today, of course, we have my favorite braising cut, the beef cheek, and we'll first sear it. So, hot pan, and of course this is a batch cooking dish, but for the purpose of demonstration, we have one cheek, which we'll cut into 4 large chunks, just to speed up the cooking process. As usual, high smoke point neutral oil, in this case vegetable oil, and be very generous with the oil. We're going to skim off most of the fat anyway. Once the oil is shimmering, beef cheeks, they go in. And you can use any braising joint for this, so short ribs, briskets, if you don't mind a bit of bone, oxtail, they all work. And what we're trying to achieve here, through heat, we want to cause the Maillard reaction, making the meat taste meaty. In the original recipe, this is done low and slow through careful mothering. But because we want to simplify the process, we're practically dividing and conquering the caramelization process rapidly here and later slower and gentler with the paste. If this is sticking, by the way, it's absolutely fine. Leave it, let it brown, and once it's properly caramelized, they'll release themselves very easily. Now, while this is caramelizing, we make the Pemasak, our paste for the rendang. And for that, of course, we'll use pesto and mortar. Now, last time I went a bit lazy and I only used fresh chilies. I realized the combination of dried and fresh really makes a difference. So today, a bit of dried chilies as well. And like I said many times in my curry recipes, it's very important to remove the seeds from the chilies because they add very little flavors but a lot of spiciness. So if you want it spicier, you're much better off adding more chili flesh and avoid the seeds so you get more flavors out of it. Now we go. And we always start with the dry ingredients and work our way towards the wet ones. Next up, lemongrass. And as usual, we remove the tough outer leaves. Perfect. Lemongrass, they go in. And of course, the offcuts of the lemongrass, which we normally would just throw away, can now go in with the beef just to add a bit more flavors on the surface when we braise them. And once our beautiful beef is golden brown on all sides, we cover it with water to start the slow cooking process. And we continue. Next up, some ginger. Once again, ginger offcuts, they go in. With the ginger and a grinder, I always like to cut through the fiber once before putting them in to avoid having those stringy texture later on in the paste. Next up, Galangal. Offcut goes in again. Like I said last time, the recipe just a guidance, so we're using very basic ingredients from the old cookbooks. But once you've made this once, you can add whatever you like. Next up, we're introducing even wetter ingredients. We have the shallots, which would add a ton of sweetness once cooked down. Perfect. Oh, this one you really feel in your eyes. Next up, some garlic. Perfect. And finally, the fresh chili. Once again, we remove the seeds. We'll add a bit here to reinforce the spiciness on the surface. Perfect. Now, just like last time, the original recipe calls for turmeric leaves, which is extremely hard to find. So, once again, we have the next best thing, some fresh curry leaves. because we're not going to have enough time to wilt them down in the paste cooking process, we're simply going to add them to the braising liquid to impart some flavors to the surface of the beef cheeks. And now we salt, bearing in mind that the paste will become very salty. Lid on, and we braise this until the cheeks are tender. With the chunks this size, about 2 hours, and during which we'll pound this into a fine paste and set this aside. I'll see you then. Alright, after 2 hours, our beef is ready and definitely fork tender. I mean, this whole thing smells and looks so good that it's very tempting just to make some noodles and finish the dish, but we won't. So now, we set this aside to keep warm and we start to develop the rendang flavors. First, by cooking the coconut milk, evaporating the water content and splitting the fat from the solids. And just like the Thai curry, I find it the easiest to use a whisk. So, Cassie's Panda whisk, and we go. You can afford to have more heat in the beginning, but once you feel a bit of resistance, that's when you know you need to mother it. You can almost gauge how much liquid remains by how vigorous the steam is. So at this point we know we still have a bit to go. Don't let my fast editing fool you, by the way. Yeah? This process takes a while, so be patient. It is what's going to give us that unique, slowly caramelized coconutty goodness. Also your right arm will work out, or left arm. So once the evaporation has subsided, this is ready for extremely flavorsome Pemasak. Now, the French onion soup process begins. Of course, even without the fine paste, the French onion soup takes at least an hour to make with the old school method of careful mothering and slow sweating. But, like we mentioned in our Coca-Cola brisket recipe, you could cheat by doing it at much higher heat but continuously deglassing the pan with cold water. And today, we'll do exactly the same, but one better, because we have an even more flavorsome liquid to act as our water. We carefully skim off the fat, as promised, and now we can afford to do the sweating at much higher heat. And whenever something catches, we'll simply add a small dash of this extremely flavorsome cooking liquid. Remember, we added all the off bits from the same ingredients as the paste, so every time we add a small dash, we're reinforcing the same flavor profile. And of course, the objective of the exercise is to achieve that beautiful dark caramel color that we achieved a week ago with a lot more work. I'm not saying this is easy, but compared to 4 hours of mothering the stove, moving things continuously, I think it's relatively easier. And of course, because of the shallot, the garlic, and the other wet ingredients, we introduce moisture to the pan. So first, these moistures have to be evaporated. And depending on our mood and the taste we're trying to achieve, we also have extra coconut milk here, just to mix things up a bit if necessary. Spicy. We can switch to a spatula. You see, it's starting to catch, but I don't mind. I want them to catch slightly, so I could deglass with my flavorsome liquid. And this will start to give us the dark brown color. Slightly brown, let's go. And we scrape. There's more, we add more. Back to the whisk. Do the other side. I'm alternating between the whisk and the spatula because with the whisk it's very hard to even build up a fond. It's too thorough. Once again, we see the fond, we add the liquid. And you play with the heat. If you want to buy yourself more time, lower it. The objective of the exercise is caramelization, Maillard reaction, without burning. Oh, by the way, in case I forgot to explain, the reason why I didn't stick with the top side is, for me, they chose it, well, because they used a lot of coconut milk, thus giving the dish a lot of fat, partly for the sake of preservation. Since for us that's no longer an issue, we can afford to use a very tender cut with more connective tissues and a bit higher fat content. So we have a texture that's closer to a beautifully braised beef than a slightly chewy, more jerky-like end product. Each time we deglass, the whole mixture gets closer to the rendang color. The smell is already getting close, and it's been what, 10-15 minutes max? And you can use it as a dressing for many things, even a steak. So this becomes very versatile. Now, both the texture and the color are getting there. So We take it a bit further, and then it becomes a personal preference. How dark you want to take this, and you taste to decide. Suddenly, most of the cooking liquid is working its way into the rendang, huh? Now, once you're happy with the flavor and the color and the texture, we reduce it a tiny bit more at the lowest heat possible, just like the real deal. And we very carefully add our beef to emulsify. Because of the long braising time, be very gentle. Treat them like tofu. Work everything together, just like last week. Beautiful. Perfect. Now we can plate. Wow, look at this. Because the beef is themselves browned separately, they already have this tremendous color, just like the real deal. This is a dry dish. And that's it. Deep, wonderful coconut flavors with a softer texture and a much shorter active cooking time. I have too much respect for rendang to call this a rendang, but this is my braised beef with rendang flavors. I really hope you enjoy.